Is South Africa's democracy under attack? Well, Defend Our Democracy believes it just may be. It's hosting a two-day conference to discuss the issue. ENCA reporter Moloko Moloto is there and joins us live now. No doubt there have been various issues that have been ventilated over the last few hours as the conference is underway. And also maybe this notion that corruption and state capture are central to the threatening of South Africa's democracy. We saw that happening, and of course there are attempts for reversal of the impact of state capture. But what has been spoken about around this particular theme?
That is very true, Rofiwa. In fact, earlier when I was talking to Reverend Frank Shikane, he pointed out that, look, corruption has been there during apartheid, and the old, as he put it, were also corrupting the new. But of course, the whole issue around the threats that our democracy is supposedly faced with, be it state capture, be it the killing of whistleblowers. In fact, one of the delegates here was saying, look, if our democracy is going to have any future, we need to start protecting our whistleblowers. Of course, we have had several people who had spoken out or were, opposing perhaps even corruption and even state capture. They were killed. And I'm joined now by Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, who, as you would know, was the former Deputy Minister of Finance. We heard how Mr. Jonas has resisted the offer of 600 million rand by the Guptas, allegedly. Mr. Jonas, thank you so much for joining us. Just recap for us the presentation that you made yesterday around this particular conference.
Look, I mean, in the overall, I think what I tried to do is to kind of locate the discussion in what I consider to be critical trends globally. Generally, I argued that democracy is under attack across the globe, and I used the concept of democratic backsliding. You see reversals of some of the democratic gains that have been made by different countries. Probably the most typical one is your Donald Trump in the US, and the reversal of some of those democratic practices that we know to have been. But also I dealt with what are the underlying factors in this democratic backsliding. And clearly I think the point I was really trying to make is that at the center of the democratic backsliding is the economic realities that are fast changing. So our economic model that has probably driven the world over the last many decades clearly has been highly non-inclusive in nature. So you have seen inequality and unemployment rising in different jurisdictions. We have also seen middle-class standards sliding downward in different parts of the world, and so on and so on. And suddenly you have a bigger number of people in different countries not having a stake in the economy. And therefore, I mean, if you don't have a stake in the economy, it follows that political participation becomes very problematic in these jurisdictions. So the economy and the economic model is probably one central feature of the democratic backsliding. The second element is clearly that elites, political and economic elites, have become increasingly corrupt across the globe. And you see that trend, of course, in South Africa with our recent experience increasing and growing. And so that's another element, I mean. But that has created a field day for populists, because populists offer simple solutions to this and offer grand ideas about how to resolve some of these challenges, etc. But in essence, they are almost self-effacing, and most of those are self-interested. So that's the danger. Those are some of the dangers that are highlighted in the initial opening input.
Let us talk about the solutions. As South Africans, should we really hope and believe that we will ever defeat this scourge of corruption?
Look, we will. I mean, I'm very optimistic that we will. I mean, I think part of what we need is to realize is that we have a political crisis, I think, and the nature of the political crisis is that you're seeing increasingly political participation by citizenry is declining very fast. In fact, political parties, most of them are not representing any of the constituencies. So you have a lot of people outside of the political system. If you look at the participation in the last elections, and it was lower than what it was before, you have probably a significantly millions of South Africans who did not participate in the elections, as it were. So that's a problem, a conundrum. So part of the proposals that are coming through is that change the electoral system, because once you move to a constituency-based system, as opposed to party proportional representation.
But some people would say it's happening at the local government level, and even these independent candidates, really, it's not easy to even hold them accountable.
It's you can say that. But our experience at the local government level has always been that even the little constituency-based participation is still party-driven. So we don't have a momentum around constituency-based electoral system, and that's what I think we're suggesting, amongst other things. But again, create mechanisms for increasing participation of citizens in politics, in public interest issues, etc., etc. And that's the challenge we have. That requires public education. It requires campaigning on critical issues. It requires taking up different issues with communities.
Let me ask you this. You're saying we're having a political crisis. We have new leaders in the form leadership that is government headed by President Cyril Ramaphosa, and when he came into the fore, there was this euphoria and hope that he is going to lift the bar a bit higher, the standard a bit higher. With the revelations now that monies were found stashed in the sofas and all these whole things, should South Africans really continue to believe that this is the right man?
I come back to a point I make. I think the crisis is the political system. As long as we look at individuals and think that you have messiahs who can solve the problem, we're still going to be stuck where we are. That is why I think the conversation is about how do you transform the political system. Our view, and most participants in this conference, is that change the electoral system, increase political participation of citizenry, and create in South Africa an active citizenry, and create, this idea here is that you come up with a broad agenda, almost a people's manifesto, and start really kind of activating civil society and creating a momentum in a movement that doesn't seek to go into parliament, that doesn't seek to be government, but that actually looks after the interest of citizenry.
Yeah, just finally, how are we going to get the citizens involved and participate actively, considering the fact that you are gathered here? I'm not too sure how representative this conference is.
Public education is going to be a critical factor. Civic education is going to be a critical factor. But I think all of these things, think about it. In Kliptown in 1955, you started out with a number of people, of course, through a process, arriving at most of the people here come from different constituencies. But then it created a momentum around which people started selling new ideas about where to go. So I think you're seeing an interesting process starting in South Africa. And this is probably a historic conference in that sense, because we're kind of starting to have people who are coming from all corners of South Africa saying we are concerned. And out of that concern, they started talking about the issues that they are talking about, which are fairly substantive issues, if you think about it. They're talking about how to change the economic model, how to change the political system, how to change the electoral system. These are big issues. But then you have to do proper public education so that you have citizenry understanding what the issues are.
Right.
Thank you.
No, thanks very much. Mcebisi Jonas, the former Deputy Minister of Finance, of course, he says this is the start of a new process. As to whether this process will ever achieve anything, I guess your guess is as good as mine, because despite the fact that a lot of people, at least on social media and those who have the public platforms, their unhappiness, the African National Congress, the party that has been in government since the dawn of democracy, continues to be re-elected time and time again.
They absolutely do continue to be re-elected time and time again, Moloko, but it remains to be seen what will happen not only in December at the conference, the ANC elective conference, but what happens in 2024. We will see how fed up South Africans actually are and how we actually value our democracy. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. That is Moloko Moloto there, covering that conference around democracy in South Africa, engaging former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas on state capture challenges in the country and the recourse that needs to follow.